I would go further than decriminalise, and I would legalise and regulate every drug. And this weekend has tragically given us yet another example and a reason why. A 15-year-old girl lost her life this weekend because apparently she took MDMA or ecstasy. In all likelihood, that tablet will have been manufactured in some grubby, backstreet, entirely illegal production facility, as opposed to having been manufactured in a regulated, licensed facility where we would have known exactly what was going into that tablet. It would have been supplied in a safe dosage with advice as it was sold over the counter in a licensed and regulated retail outlet.
Lucy, what about that for an argument?
Well, I've worked in mental health for 20 years. I've worked for 15 of those years in a hospital that has a drug and alcohol addiction unit. And so I've seen firsthand the real trauma that taking drugs can bring, not just to an individual's life, rupturing families, destroying marriages, ruining careers. And I worry that decriminalisation actually sends the wrong message. Basically, what you're saying is drugs can be safe. You can make drugs legal, but that doesn't actually mean that they're safe. And we've actually got an opioid crisis at the moment. Research came out in January that showed that Americans are more likely to die of an opioid overdose than they are of a car crash. So we're actually getting to the point where people see these drugs as actually normalised, and we can't go down that path any further. We have to tell people that even if you think a little bit of cannabis won't do you any harm, you simply don't know that because you don't know your own physiognomy. You're almost playing Russian roulette with people's bodies and minds, and we have to draw a line somewhere. Decriminalisation is not the way. We are not winning the war on drugs. I completely agree with that. And our law enforcement, one might argue, needs to be smarter. But we simply cannot allow people to think that taking drugs is a great idea.
Peter?
The drugs industry is worth probably about $500 billion a year around the globe. And ours, of course, in the UK is many, many millions upon millions of pounds. This industry is controlled by organised crime, by villains who want you to buy their drugs, who want you to buy more of their drugs, who want you to try and take yet something else to experiment, and who inherently have an interest in getting you to take more and more drugs. If this entire industry, its sourcing, its manufacture, its retail, was regulated, yes, the drugs would be taxed. The demand is not going to go away. We have seen that. The demand is there. It's undiminished, and it's probably on the increase.
But I disagree that we've got to a place where, particularly in smoking and alcohol, that actually we could have said a generation ago, people will never stop smoking, people will never stop drinking. Actually, what we've seen is that if you educate people about the dangers, they can actually change their behaviour.
But
I think I sort of agree with both of you to some extent, because I think I bow to Peter's experience on this and having seen it. And do I like the idea of drug dealers going bust overnight? Yes, I do, which is what we would do. That industry, the guys who are making millions from this, would suddenly stop making any money. I like the idea of that. Let's pull the rug from underneath them. However, as the mother of a teenage boy, I really worry about the fact that he might smoke his first joint and, as Lucy says, has some sort of psychotic episode or doesn't respond well to him. What we would need to do, if we are going to do that, is increase the education that they're currently not getting, I think, teenagers and young people, around what drugs can physiologically, psychologically, emotionally do to them. That's not what we talk about. We talk about it's illegal, it's illegal.
And also it's partly to do with the language, because we now have we have this ridiculous phrase of legal highs, where people can buy drugs online or they can go to sort of head shops. And there's a head shop in Covent Garden, for heaven's sake, where people are actually buying things that they think are okay because it has the word legal in the title. But actually the bottom line is you do not know, ever. Even if you've taken drugs for 10 years, you don't actually know how that that next batch is going to affect you. Not least because actually, I love the way that you kind of tell this story of the drug dealers who it makes it sound like there is actually a relationship there between the drug dealer and the user, but actually a lot of this stuff is being bought online very anonymously.
Peter,
we have to close it down
the
completely.
messaging here would be the state now thinks you can take drugs. That's what we'd be saying if we made them legal, wouldn't we?
Far from it, because my vision for the legalisation and regulation of this industry takes a large part of what Lucy's saying and a large part of what Beverly's saying. The billions that would be raised through selling drugs to people who will always take drugs will go into the education, the rehab services that these...
What about people like my children who I don't think have taken drugs and I hope never will? Won't they, because they're very young, but won't they just see messages saying, buy them here, and I can't then say, don't do that, don't ever go, because it's now legal.
It will strip away that act of teenage rebellion.
Defiance and rebellion.
Because,
it's not cool if it's legal.
Oh, I see.
Exactly.
It suddenly makes them not cool.
and when you are in that unimaginatively named drugstore, okay, and it's a Saturday night, and that young person is queuing to buy their ecstasy tablet, their cocaine, their cannabis, or whatever it is, imagine the horror and the embarrassment when their grandfather is in the same queue because he's going to buy a joint to smoke while he watches
What a thought.
Strictly.
Lucy, a store where people go in and buy cocaine to...
There has often been
Sniff
an
while they're
argument
watching
that
Strictly?
the idea that somehow young people are more attracted to something because it's forbidden, that actually the forbidden fruit idea means that it makes it more attractive to them. But the problem is that certainly wasn't necessarily the case when it came to cigarettes. Cigarettes were attractive because they were marketed in a particular way to look sophisticated and look very adult and mature. So there is an element of education that needs to take place so that you recognise that when you're talking to teenagers, you're saying, this isn't a product that's cool. This isn't a product that we could legalise just so that you can have easier access to it, and that might make it more healthy. We want to educate you that this could actually kill you.
I completely
Not make
agree.
you ill, it could kill you.
I absolutely agree, and that will form part of the whole regulation, legalisation.
But I love the idea that
and
somehow the money that
education.
we might get from the taxes could go to fund the rehab. That actually it's an understanding that drugs mess you up and that we might have to send people into rehab in order to heal them. That actually, why don't we just eliminate that possibility completely and just say, let's keep drugs as illegal.
That can't be done because the war on drugs has been fought and manifestly lost for nearly 50 years. It cannot be won. It will not be won. The demand will not go away.
Okay.
So,
All right. You say manifestly lost. I haven't seen an illegal drug in the whole of my life. I know I'm square, but I haven't. I don't know where. I know who's got them. I haven't seen anyone.